views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host and or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of the host and or Paranormal Buzz Radio and or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is prohibited. Paranormal Buzz Radio will not be held responsible for you holding your knees, crying, and rocking in a corner in a puddle of your own urine, or being beheaded by a group of children in the cornfield. In fact, if you come across a group of children in a cornfield, we promise to make fun of you as you run away screaming in terror. Listener discretion is advised.
You're listening to RAP Paranormal and Friends with your hosts,
Kim Purvis
and Allison Robinson. Make sure to check us out on our Facebook pages, RAP Paranormal and Friends and RAP Paranormal Busters, for up-to-date show information and events. Hey everyone, welcome to RAP Paranormal and Friends. I have a special guest here today with a very interesting story. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background before we start talking to our guest. Jes Kerzen is going to be the guest today, and she holds a postgraduate BPhil degree and has worked in a huge variety of roles in many educational settings, from specialist speech, language teacher to head of English, from running an alternative education hub of home educated children in a Abbey Undercroft, to working with a farmer and a life-size model calf, delivering workshops on social and emotional skills in rural and primary schools in west of England. But she's very passionate and an advocate for neurodiverse students, particularly those with autistic spectrum perception and communication challenges. She has found that wherever she worked, these were the children who so often to appear in her life enriched greatly. One particular encounter, though, with a small boy set her on a journey of discovery that would completely change her life's trajectory. From this child and his classmates just learned that there were ways of communicating and perceiving she had never dreamed of. She has consequently spent many years researching telepathy, remote viewing, and other psychic abilities, along with the spiritual insights they can sometimes lead to. Now retired and living in a 350-year-old cottage in Somerset, England, Jes devotes much of her time to working with Asher, that very special former pupil, continuing to learn from him and writing about their work together, which kind of leads us to her book, A Mind Beyon Words. So welcome, Jes, to the show.
Thank you, Alison. It's lovely to be there.
Yes, absolutely. Now, let's kind of get into your journey here. How did you come about meeting Asher?
Yeah, well, to start with, it was a totally normal encounter. I was a school teacher, he was a pupil. I was teaching children with speech and language difficulties, and he had those, plenty of them. So he fetched up in my classroom. I'd been doing the job for 6 or 7 years before he arrived. So as far as I was concerned, I knew just what I was doing. I was supposed to be helping these poor little children who couldn't communicate properly to communicate. But he taught me that wasn't quite the case.
Yes. And how did he teach you this? Like, what was your communication like with Asher other than other students with disabilities?
Well, to start with, it was totally normal. He didn't have very much intelligible speech. But after he'd been in the class a few weeks, I noticed that the children in my class were actually communicating with each other, but not through words. They didn't have the words to talk, but I could see that they were playing a game. There was this conversation on that I wasn't party to, and that got me very curious. And then Asher, who seemed to be the ringleader of all of that, I'd never noticed it before in all the years I've been doing that job, but when he arrived in the class, suddenly there was this very strange thing going on. So I took him aside and had a little chat to him, and he told me that he and I had made an agreement before he was born that we were going to work together. And when I asked what sort of work we were going to do, he said I was going to be his helper. I was going to help him to, I suppose, communicate, but I assumed he meant get better at speaking, but he didn't mean that at all. What he actually told me was that he was telepathic, that people didn't seem, from the other children in the class, people didn't seem to be picking up on his telepathy, but he reckoned I probably could with a bit of work.
Oh, wow. So he must
started
have
working on me.
Yeah, he must have saw something special in you. Maybe he was able to pick up on, like, maybe that you had the ability to do it. You just didn't know that you had the ability to do it. Does that seem...
No, I really didn't.
Now, you've been working with him since, what, the age of 6?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's now in his early 30s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay. Oh, wow. Wow. That is amazing. That is amazing. Now, I know that he is a very special being, and that doctors were kind of trying to persuade him that he was just kind of delusional and that it was part of his Asperger's syndrome. Is that kind of correct?
That's absolutely right. That was a really bad time in his life. He was about 16, I guess, and for years up to that point, he had been learning to speak. He was actually very good at speaking by that point. But he would share with me things he could do that other people couldn't, visions he'd get, things he'd know, sort of downloads that just came to him from he didn't quite know where. It was all a bit spontaneous, but he had this knowing, which he didn't share with anyone else until he went for his official diagnosis as Asperger's syndrome, which was a form of autism. And the doctor said to him, oh, well, you'll not be very good at communicating with other people. You'll probably find it difficult to make friends, telling him all the problems, all the things that were wrong with him, which is not what a 16-year-old kid really needs to hear.
Right.
And then the doctor said, any other symptoms, anything else that's been bothering you? And so Asher said, well, yeah, I do see things sometimes, and I sort of know things in my head. I don't hear them exactly, but it's like I'm being spoken to. And the doctor just sort of nodded sagely and said, oh, yes, all those delusions. Yes, that's quite a common symptom of Asperger's. Just put it aside and try not to think about it. Try and concentrate on behaving as normally as you can. And so for a while, he absolutely believed that. And he told me that his doctor had told him that this was a delusion, so it must be. And I was this lone voice saying to him, no, it's not a delusion, Asher. It's actually really an amazing skill you've got there, and you need to work at it. But I think I was just the one voice saying this. Was saying, well, the doctor's the expert, so he knows.
Right, yeah. Now, do you think that... and I've heard this, seeing documentaries and things on TV, but people that are on, like, the autistic spectrum or have a disability like that, it seems like they have some kind of, you know, they seem to have some kind of abilities, or some of them are like musical geniuses, you know,
Yeah.
and things of that nature. What do you think? I'm trying to think of the word that I have it in my head. I just can't think of the word that I want to say. But how do you think they come about with this? Like, if they're not able to really communicate and things, do you think that's their form of communication with the world? Is like through music or, you know, your abilities like psychic abilities or telepathic or...
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I think, well, Asher's version of it is that people who are what our society calls normal, the neurotypical society, we just get on with daily lives. We have a million things to confuse us and concern us, and we have to just, you know, we're completely run ragged, just living our day-to-day lives, aren't we? But if you take somebody who's on the autistic spectrum, who has that sort of perception, who perhaps has other people that help them out with stuff like that, they don't have to get quite as involved. It gives them more time on their own. They're not so caught up in social interactions. And they, if you like, just go deep. They go really deep. I'm sort of thinking like a Buddhist monk might go off and speak to anybody for months at a time. And I think it's kind of close to that. I know Asher certainly has always had an incredible laser-like focus. Whatever he's thinking about, he just thinks about that and doesn't let himself get distracted.
Wow.
And a lot of the autistic people I've come across and worked with are exactly like that. So it might be music, as you say, it might be maths, it might be art. There's those people who can look at a scene once and draw it completely in all its detail. I think there's so many abilities, and they've got that, and they're not so caught up in the sort of physical day-to-day stuff. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah, it does. Now, when you first met Asher, before, you know, he started talking to you kind of telepathically, was his form of communication just through writing, or how did he communicate with others?
He had a little bit of speech, but he had a problem with the muscles in his mouth, so he couldn't pronounce words clearly, so they wouldn't come across clearly. But, well, when I first heard about Asher, the first thing he used to do in his class, like a kindergarten class with very small children, if he wanted the other children's attention, he would just thump his fist really hard on the table and glare at them and then point at whatever he wanted and they would hand it to him. He was actually quite a big kid for his age, and he got a formidable stare, so they didn't want to get in the way of him. So yeah, he'd do it just through sort of using gestures and signs, and very limited.
Wow, that is amazing. Now, as he's gotten older, you talk about him kind of out-of-body experiences to other realms. Can you kind of enlighten us on what that is?
Yeah, when he was a kid, as I've said to you, he sort of got these odd things that just came into his mind, and he didn't have any control over them. It's just random. But as he's got older, he's learnt to control it, and he's now able to keep his human body just ticking over, and he's able to move out of body. And I can't say the place he goes to, because he says it's outside of time and it's outside of space, so you can't call it a place, but he goes to what he would claim is a different dimension, a sort of psychological landscape, if you like, which he calls the realms. So it's visits the realms, and he tells me that what he sees there could be described as a beginning Listen Endless library, and he can just go there and look up anything that he wants to look up. And he doesn't have to read a book like you or I would have to maybe. He just has to lay his hand on that particular piece of information and he's just got it all, which he's actually proved to me in physical life as well. I've had him read a book like that, just hold, which was really annoying as his teacher, me trying hard to get the children to read the books. Asher could just literally put his hand on top of a book, summarise the whole thing for me.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. I wish I could do that. I love to
So do I. Think of the hours it would save.
I know. It would, for real. Like, I love to read, but sometimes I don't have the focus as I've gotten older. Like, my mind tends to slip, and then I'm thinking of other things like, oh, I should be doing laundry or dishes besides reading a book, So that would be amazing if I could just put my hand on there and just know the whole thing. That would just be truly amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm getting to the age now in my 70s where I'm thinking, have I got enough years left to read all the books I want to read? So,
I know.
Yeah, would be handy.
It would be handy. Now, with your book, A Mind Beyon Words, as we're talking about, you talk about your things with Asher and kind of through the years of you helping him, but have you had any of these other abilities with other students of yours where you've done telepathy or anything like that with them? Or
certainly not to the degree I have with Asher. When I had a class where I worked with him when he was a little 6-year-old, there were a couple of other kids in the class who could get through to me telepathically, but it wasn't like a two-way dialogue. And since then, sort of in more recent years, I was working with teenagers, many of whom had autistic perception, and several of those could read my mind. I remember there was one, I used to play this kind of game with the kids where one kid was blindfold in the middle of the room, and I'd hide something jangly under their chair, and the kids sitting around the edge, I'd silently point at a child and they would have to creep up and grab this treasure from underneath the chair without making any sound. Now, there was one little boy who was definitely autistic, and every single time I picked somebody, he would just point straight at that kid, and we checked his blindfold, we checked that, everything was right. And then I suddenly said to him, oh, I know what you're doing. You're reading my mind, aren't you? You're seeing in your mind who I'm pointing to. And this kid got really flustered and said, oh, I thought that was the point of the game. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Am I cheating?
Oh, that's good. Oh, my gosh. That's a great one. I like that. That's too funny.
Yeah. It was wonderful.
Oh, yeah, I bet. Now, you say that you still are helping out with Asher. Now, are you writing any more books on any more of this, or?
Yep, we've made two now. It's not anywhere near completion, but I work with him most evenings. In fact, we put aside an hour every evening where I'll just tune into him, and the way it works is I sit there, we connect mentally, we don't use phones, we don't use anything physical. He lives over in London, which is about 150 miles away from where I am in the southwest. So we're not using any other contact, but I just tune into him. And then I usually start by saying hi and asking a question, and I'm writing my words and the stuff that comes from him in a notebook so that I've got a record of it. It's a little bit like dreaming. You sort of think you're going to remember it all, but then when you wake up you don't. And I know that if I was spending sort of 50 minutes chatting with him, I wouldn't recall all of it. So he got a bit fed up with that initially and said, "Oh, this takes you so long." I said, "Yeah, but I'm going to have to just keep writing it down. Of course, I can't record it through audio because there's no sound coming from him. It's
Right,
just
yes.
thoughts."
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, how do you get into that state? Do you go into like a meditation state when you're trying to communicate?
It's a kind of mild meditation state. I have this, I call it a ritual, but you could call it anything really. I just sit quietly in my room where I won't be interrupted, and I just physically brush my hands aside and brush out anything that's on my mind. So if I'm thinking about, I should have done that today, or I've got to see so-and-so tomorrow, or whatever it is, pushing those things away until I've got a sort of blank space, and then I'm just tuning into that blank space, and I wait until I pick Asher up, and then my hands actually start by themselves to move away. If I start with them holding them together, they just start to move further and further away, and sometimes they whoosh away really quickly, and other times it's more of a sort of gentle flow, and I can kind of pick up the mood he's in by that, and tell what kind of thing I'm going to be getting and how close we are really.
Wow, that's amazing. So, I mean, he could be doing anything, and then he just kind of picks up on your presence when it's time to communicate with him, or like...
I don't really know what he's doing in terms of physical life. I mean, he's certainly not an animal, so he wouldn't be out, enjoying himself. He's a very reclusive young man. He tends to sort of probably just stay in his room in the evening. So, he's probably in a fairly quiet place anyway. But, it works somehow.
Wow, that's amazing. Have you had anybody else come up to you and ask for your help lately with their children or anything like that? Or I know you're retired, but I don't know if you still help others, if they come to you or if they've heard about you.
It's interesting actually. I don't teach anymore, and I don't work with families anymore. I did that for many years, but since I've had the book published, since I've been selling a Mind Beyon Words at fairs and things like that, I will often get people walking up to me, and I've got like this banner that says telepathic, relationship, autistic, all the key words on it. And people just walk up and go, "Hey, I work with autistic adults, or I work with children with Down syndrome, or whatever, and I'm sure I'm picking up things from them. I'm sure they're speaking into my mind. Do you think I'm not imagining it?" And I'll go, "Yeah, I think you're not imagining it." Actually, I've got quite friendly with some of them who, really started, firstly, to believe that what they thought was happening actually could be happening, because there's this other person they've met who it's happening to. And I think our next book is going to be that sort of networking, getting people together and trying to make people understand, this isn't just a one-off sort of freak show. This is actually something that a lot of people are doing, but I think they're doing it very quietly because they're terrified that put them and tell them they're delusional and all the rest.
Right, yeah. I get that 100%. Now, you said that you go to fairs and things like that. So you have any other ones that are coming up that you're going to be at that people can check out?
Oh, I think my next one's sometime in August. That's in Glastonbury, which is the town I live in Somerset in England. And I think I've got another one later in the year. But I have a website. So if I give you my website address, then people can check that out. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's www.ashertree, ASHERTREE.com.
Okay.
And I I have a page on there with links and events, which I'm sure I'll be linking your interview into it, and
perfect.
people will be able to check that out and put up any events that I'm going to be appearing at or any reviews I've had, that sort of thing.
Now, can people purchase your book on your website or?
Not on the website as such. They can purchase it on Collective Ink's website, which is my publisher, or just about anywhere. I mean, the usual place. I even noticed it was up on Walmart's site the other day, which amazed me. So, yeah, it's all over the world, and it's available all over the place. I've got a few French friends who are nagging that they want it to be translated into French because they can read it, but their mates can't. Maybe that'll happen.
Well, there you go. That'll be something interesting. I guess I've never thought about that. Yeah, I mean, books and need to be probably printed in a bunch of other languages as well, but I guess I've never really paid attention to that. I guess it's never something there's other languages, but I'm just so used to just reading everything in English, so that does make sense. But yeah, that's a lot of work to do that. I wonder if there's some way, if they were to download it, that they could translate it through some kind of app or something.
It probably is on digital. Yeah. I'm not very clued into all this digital stuff, but I know you can listen into it being read by a robot, can't you? It's quite amusing listening to my book being read by a robot. Every time I've left a gap, it goes asterisk, asterisk, asterisk.
I guess I haven't tried that, but that would be kind of funny to listen to. Just put out every little thing. That's funny.
Yeah.
But there's so many things out there in technology that, is beyond, and that's like a whole nother episode there with everything they've come out with. But so you have your website. Do you have any other social media or just your website?
I do have a Facebook page, and I write on medium.com, which is a writer's platform. Okay. That's about it, really. I've got a YouTube channel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Jes Kerzen YouTube channel, where I don't physically appear, but I sort of write the stuff and then just put images in to go with it. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. All of those you can link to on my website. So, yeah, it's got a link to Facebook. It's got a link to the YouTube channel, and probably got one to Medium as well. So, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, Jes, it was a pleasure having you on. The book was fantastic. I hope that it really inspires a lot of people out there, especially if they have children that are dealing with this, or, that this might give them some insight and some help, and maybe they can find others that are like you to help them with their children as well.
Yeah, and they can stop believing they're disordered and accept that they're differently ordered, because that's the key point. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone, please go check out Jes's book, A Mind Beyon Words, and thank you, Jes, for being on. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise, Alison. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.